This is Bart Everson, creative generalist here at the Center for the Advancement of Teaching and Faculty Development. When I introduce myself as a creative generalist in a professional context, I always feel compelled to add that yes, that is my official job title. And in part that's because it was a long time coming. It took years of advocacy to get my job title changed. But mainly it's because I relish the title itself, what it means. I feel it is really just about the perfect descriptor for who I am and what I do. Actually, there is one title that might be even better, play-arounder. But I kind of doubt the good folks at HR would go for that, so I'm sticking with creative generalist for now. Now, I swear I cooked up the title all on my own, but of course I wasn't the first. In fact, a little cursory research indicates this term first came into currency in the late 1960s, around the time I was born. Fast forward a few decades, a guy named Steve Hardy played a role in promoting the concept with his blog, Creative Generalist, which he launched in early 2002 as an outpost for curious divergent thinkers. But here's what it means to me. I was originally hired as a specialist, but that label never sat right with me. You see, I've always had a broad array of interests and skills. In fact, for much of my life, my seeming inability to commit to one narrow domain or subject, it really felt like a detriment. As an undergraduate, I never did manage to choose a major. I ended up with a Bachelor of General Studies. At age 25, I groused in my journal about the plethora of projects which occupied me. Always hopping from one thing to the next, I wrote. Feel like a jack of all trades. Don't forget the second half of that title, master of none. Now, years later, I've learned some wiseacre expanded this to include, but oftentimes better than a master of one, which is nice. But please don't tell me that's a quote from Shakespeare. Now, when I returned to school for my graduate education, I found myself in the first cohort of a new program which was extremely fluid, and I thrived in that milieu. We were housed in a traditional department, telecommunications in fact, but essentially I spent 2 years playing around with what we called new media in the 1990s. And so it was that I secured my master's degree without a well-formed disciplinary identity. I do have a facility with working with computer technology in general, but that's kind of ubiquitous these days. I do have an orientation toward media in particular, but that has spanned many forms and genres. In short, I've always been a generalist. I'm still a generalist. I will always be a generalist. It's the creative part that really gets my juices flowing. Sure, I'm a creative individual, a media artist, if you will, but it's more than that. In this context, it's not just about my own energy. It's about the process itself. I hope it's evident that I'm here at Xavier to help others, particularly our faculty. Help you to realize your own creative visions. I encourage our faculty to see both their teaching and their research as creative acts. In service of that, I've dedicated much of my personal and professional energy to creativity itself. To me, it's not just a job, but a way of life. Now, as the emphasis on process suggests, I'm not a done deal. I'm not a finished product. My job title, it urges me on to continue making new connections, unexpected connections a lot of times. I get involved in various projects for various purposes, never knowing where it's going to lead. After all, as I wrote in an abandoned preface to my master's thesis, any specific project is only part of my larger work in progress, a project which I call my life. So that's what being a creative generalist means to me. But it's always good to look at the evidence, which in this case just means what other people are saying. I officially adopted this title in January of 2021. It was almost 2 years before OpenAI shocked the world with ChatGPT, and suddenly everybody's talking about generative artificial intelligence. But, a quick web search reveals that since then, the idea of the creative generalist may be gaining ground. In fact, people like Ashok Krish and Brent Peterson are writing about the rise of the creative generalist. Peterson writes that this symbolizes a transformative shift in our approach to creativity and problem solving, a transition from specialization to a holistic adaptive approach. And Krish actually writes that the creative generalist is a necessary evolution for the survival of our species. I'm not making this up. He asserts that the creative generalist is uniquely positioned to not only weather the storm of AI-assisted automation, but indeed to thrive in its wake. And I love that he posits that the creative generalist is not simply a reaction to the rise of generative AI, but rather a necessary counterweight. And that suggests to me that perhaps we should be teaching our students how to be creative generalists. Possibly the foremost exponent of the term is Muriel Marie Ungricht. She's a career coach, an author, a self-described autistic entrepreneur based in Antwerp. And I like what she's laying down. She writes that creative generalists could be teachers, entrepreneurs, artists, engineers, mathematicians, scientists, or any combination. Anyone could be a creative generalist. It simply depends on how their creative brain is wired and the way they choose to use it. So come to think of it, maybe some of you are creative generalists as well. Maybe you should reach out and get in touch. Who knows what we might discover together. And if you're a specialist, please don't feel left out. I have great admiration for your ability to, focus. So I look forward to collaborating with you as well.